Dr. Charles Stanley passed away yesterday at 90 years old. Now, Dr. Charles Stanley was the head minister of In Touch Ministries in Atlanta, Georgia, at the First Baptist Church. However, Dr. Charles Stanley's ministry impacted me right here in the South Bronx, and it was his ministry that shaped my relationship with the Most High and the Messiah over the last 30 years. Now, when I gave my life to Christ at 16 years old, I really didn't have a church here in New York City I wanted to go to. I really did not like the churches here in New York City because many of the pastors here were not looking to teach the scriptures and the Word of God. No, what they were looking to do was go out here and entertain black women and try to make them feel good, and they were not interested in helping a person develop and grow in a relationship with the Messiah and the Most High and learn more about the Word of God at all. So that was one of the reasons I did not want to go to many of the churches here in New York City, because many of the churches here were not about helping a person develop a relationship with the Messiah and the Most High. No, they were not about teaching the Word of God to anyone. It was all about making gullible black women feel good so that they could go out here and get tithes out of their pockets from either the money they got from their jobs or the money that many of the poor women got from welfare and SSI. And I didn't really like seeing that being done, and that's why I wanted nothing to do with many of the churches here in New York City. No, I wanted to be able to develop my relationship with God, and that's why I started watching In Touch Ministries in the 90s. And I really liked how Charles Stanley taught the Bible. He was focused more on teaching people the scriptures so that they could build a relationship with the Most High and the Messiah and learn more about why the Messiah came down to earth and learn why he sacrificed his life to pay the sin debts of all men for past, present, and future. That was one of the core lessons that I learned from Dr. Charles Stanley as related to his ministry. The other thing that I learned from Dr. Charles Stanley was it was all about living the life like Christ, and that was one of the things that I really liked about Dr. Charles Stanley's whole ministry. It was not just about you going to church as a religious ritual on Sunday. It was about you changing your life and becoming on a road to where you learn to become more like the Messiah. It was more about you applying what you read in the scriptures to your life. It was more about living that life so that you could have a more abundant life. So it was about more than just you, oh, I'm going to church on Sunday like many black people used to do in my old neighborhoods. That's what people used to do out of habit, but I didn't want to live like that because I didn't want to go out here and not bear any sort of fruit. So what I wanted to do was live that life and be able to apply what I learned. And I learned a lot about the Word of God from Dr. Charles Stanley and everything that he taught at In Touch Ministries. So In Touch Ministries had a major impact on my life over the last 30 years, and I almost never missed a broadcast of Dr. Charles Stanley's ministry when it came on every Sunday morning here on Fox 5. And if Fox 5 didn't have Dr. Charles Stanley on at the time, what I would do is sometimes head over to Ion Television on Channel 31, and I would listen to Charles Stanley on on television. And his ministry again was a major. It shaped my relationship with the Messiah and the Most High, and it was Dr. Charles Stanley's ministry that taught me a lot of the lessons as related to the life principles that he talked about in many of his sermons, because he talks about life principles as part of his overall platform, and those life principles were a major part of things as related to my developing my relationship with God. And Dr. Charles Stanley's principles, like obey God and leave all the consequences to Him, that was one principle that always resonated with me, because when you obey God, He is the one in charge and the one accountable for everything. And as a steward, you are already secure because you are following Him. So that was a principle that stayed with me, along with the principle that he stated that you will reap more than you sow, greater than you sow, later than you sow, because the seeds we put into the ground today, they eventually come back to be what we reap later on. And that's another principle from Dr. Stanley that I apply to my life to this day. And I try to go out here and put good seeds in the ground in the hopes of bearing the fruits of God. Again, these are things that I have always been applying to my life every day, because this is a way of life for me. It is not just a religion with a bunch of rituals. No, it is a way of life, because what I want to do is, again, be on the road to trying to be more like Christ and fulfilling what the law is. Because when I learned in my 20s was, again, fulfillment of the law was not just following the law. It's something that you live because you don't want to do anything. Again, it's not obligation. It's because you don't want to do these things, and you don't want to do sinful things because you want to please the Most High and the Messiah. So that's what living a life as related to a relationship with God is: listening for His voice, listening for His guidance, and listening to apply the principles that He presented in His gospel. That is what I've learned over the last 30 plus years, ever since I gave my life to Christ when I was 16. And ever since then, I have gotten guidance and, again, ministry from Dr. Charles Stanley's broadcast. And his broadcast, again, have been part of transforming my overall life and developing my relationship with the Most High and the Messiah. So that's the impact that Dr. Charles Stanley has had on me, and that's why I've stayed with his broadcast rather than deal with many of the churches out here. And it was his ministry that, again, helped me lay that foundation for my relationship with God. Now, some of my family wanted me to go to church, but I just never felt spiritually wanting to be a part of that body because of all of its dysfunction and the dysfunctional messages there, because it was all about feelings. And again, the modern church is all about feelings, and it's not about teaching you and giving you guidance. That is what a ministry is. It's about teaching men so that they can go out here and not only learn the word, but also apply the word to their life so that they can be an example of the Most High's servants to others, so that people can see an impact on your life, and that impact can have an impact on others. That was another message that I got from Dr. Charles Stanley and his service. That was one of his messages. He said you want to have an impact, and having an impact means that you become transformed like the Most High Son, the Messiah, so that you can have an example. And again, that's what Dr. Charles Stanley taught, along with being bold and being confident. Again, these are all principles that Dr. Charles Stanley taught to most of his congregation over the decades. And this is a message that, again, resonated with me over the last 30 years. And Dr. Charles Stanley, again, I'm just deeply saddened to hear about his passing, because He was a great minister and a great master teacher. And again, I like the fact that he was teaching the gospel. That was something I liked about Dr. Stanley, that I like about Ringo right now. You want to be with someone who teaches you the scriptures and teaches you how to apply it to your life so that you can go out here and be an example of the Messiah. And you can also be an example and have that impact on others so that they can see your example. And that example can go out here and be something that resonates with others, that helps them see why a life with the Most High and the Messiah is an abundant one and far better than the one that you have in this world. That was the great work of Dr. Charles Stanley, and that was the great work that he finally finished as related to things in, I think, 2020, when he basically stepped down from his position at the First Baptist Church in Atlanta and handed over the things as related to In Touch Ministries to others to continue in the work. And Dr. Charles Stanley, again, did great work here on his time on earth, serving the Most High. And as he was serving the Most High, he also was a great photographer, a father who was an example to his children, and continued to persevere even in the face of adversity. Even when his own wife tried to divorce him, he still stayed with the Most High and stayed in the gospel, and even had enough integrity to say that he would quit if his wife had divorced him, but the church still stayed with him. And again, showing great character and great resolve, a man that everyone did respect out here, and a man I had great respect for, and great respect for his ministry, because it was his ministry that again helped shape my relationship with the Most High and the Messiah, and his lessons helped me learn how to apply the word to my life. So Dr. Charles Stanley had a major impact on my life with his messages, and I will greatly miss Dr. Charles Stanley. But I know that once a servant's work is finished here on earth, he is brought home by the Most High and the Messiah to take account for his works on earth, and also to go out here and receive his rewards from the kingdom. So Dr. Charles Stanley is definitely, I believe, going to be in the kingdom. I believe he is going to receive great rewards for all of what he has done here in helping to bear fruit in transforming lives. And again, I'm sad to see him go, but as the Psalms say, the last day of a person's life on earth is one of the best days of a person's life, because that's the day that they go back to the Most High and the Messiah. And I believe he is going back to be celebrating with the Most High and the Messiah. And that is one of the things that I believe is happening with Dr. Stanley now. For all of his years of great service to the Most High, I believe he is now with the Most High in the kingdom. And and that's the thing that I believe is happening with him now. Again, we all mourn his passing, but we all celebrate his great life, and we celebrate everything as related to his great contributions, as related to his work with for the Most High and the Messiah. We celebrate his passing because, again, this man has done his work here on earth, and now he is back with the Lord. Rest in power, Dr. Charles Stanley. Thank you for all the years of messages and lessons. Thank you for all that you have done to help transform my life and the lives of others all across the globe. Thank you, Dr. Charles Stanley, for everything that you have done. It's greatly appreciated, and I thank you all for everything you have given me as related to your ministry all over the last 30 years plus of my life.